All right, hello. Let's talk about Henry IV. I'm going to start by saying history plays are difficult to read. It is okay if you're finding it difficult. Three of the main characters in this play are all named Henry, and it is just confusing. This might be a play where it's especially helpful to watch a summary. I have links to the ones I made in the description, or to read a version with good footnotes, whether that's online or on paper, just to help yourself make sure you know what's going on. If you want to know more of the background of the whole history cycle, you're welcome to I made all 8. So the one that comes before this, and then the 2 that come after that have the same main character. Hal is in both of those. But one piece of advice I have for you as you're doing the reading is scene by scene. Think to yourself of that individual scene as its own little drama. Where is their tension? Who wants what from whom? In this play, Henry IV, the King of England, what does he want in this play? He's in a position that's in some ways kind of similar to a position we saw Macbeth in. Once Macbeth has become king, he's anxious about his legacy and his keeping his crown. Henry IV didn't murder the previous king, but he did depose him, and he's worried that he too will be deposed, and also worried that his son is behaving the way the previous king did behave and is likely to be deposed as well by perhaps someone like Hotspur, Harry Percy. What does Falstaff want? Falstaff wants lots of things. He wants good food and plenty to drink and to flirt with all the women around him, not to be held accountable for his actions. But I think the thing that he wants most is for Hal to love him and to be confident of that love, right? Henry IV's primary concern seems to be his son's behavior, but Falstaff is interested in Hal's affection, and that seems like a really interesting comparison between these two older men in his life, one who is his father and one who is not his father, but in many ways treats him as the son of his heart. And if we think about what Hal wants in this play, he has this long game plan for how he's going to be a popular king and have everyone love him. But it's he wants to be extra impressive when he's king by having left his reckless ways as a young person. But in rejecting the person he used to be, he's also going to reject all of his companions who were his closest friends in his young days. So there's something really complicated in what Hal is trying to do, and I think that many people end up finding Falstaff much more compelling of a character than Hal. But I guess that brings up questions of what do we want our political leaders to be like? Do we want them to be consistent or honest or capable of positive change, or do we want to feel like they really know us or can relate to us? There's a lot of really big questions about politics that are still extremely true today. We have 2 more plays with the Prince Hal, and his most famous speech in Henry V, when he is the king, is when he encourages his troops by calling them his band of brothers, and sort of saying that in the struggle for victory, there's no division between people, no class separation. But of course, there is class separation. He is royalty, and no amount of spending time with the shadier parts of London is going to change that. When Hal becomes king in Henry IV Part 2, all of his Eastcheap buddies are there to cheer him on, and Falstaff interrupts the royal procession, calling him my king, my Jove, I speak to thee, my heart. And Hal utterly rejects him. He says, I know thee not, old man. And later, Mistress quickly says that Falstaff has died. The king has killed his heart. And it's super sad. Yeah, everyone, this can be a thing that's difficult to see on the page, but people love Falstaff, and more particularly, audiences love Falstaff. When Queen Elizabeth saw Henry IV Part 1, she's said to have specifically requested to Shakespeare that he write another play to show the fat knight in love. And so we have Merry Wives of Windsor, which shows Falstaff attempting to seduce two different married women, and it goes poorly for him, and there's lots of craziness that happens. But yeah, the story shows that Queen Elizabeth really loved Falstaff. Orson Welles has a film called Chimes at Midnight, which is a combination of Henry IV Part 1 and 2, which is like really focusing on the Falstaff scenes. Falstaff's the main character of that adaptation. So he's been really popular as a character sort of all through his existence. Scholars relate Falstaff to the medieval morality plays, where you'd have characters like everyman or Christian or like a person who is going through these allegorical situations where they're meeting characters who have names like gluttony or honesty, and various vices or virtues appear as characters. But the problem with this is if you're trying to like teach morality with this type of a play, the characters like gluttony are always going to be more fun than the like straight-laced virtues. But later, when Shakespeare takes these ideas, he transforms these characters like gluttony or sloth, and turns them into Falstaff, who is himself a character who has all of that like dynamic likability of these vices, but seems much more like a full person, and a full person who loves life. How does this show up in performance? One of the ways that this like connection with the audience shows up is a lot of direct address. Even in the locus of the play, we talked in class a little bit about the locus and the platea, or talking about breaking the fourth wall, where the locus is the like world of the play, where the characters are interacting with each other in like a particular historical context or scenic location, whereas the platea is the like that boundary between the fiction of the production and the like real world of offstage. So monologues where a character is alone on stage are often spoken from the platea, like alone with the audience, sharing their inner thoughts and feelings in a way that they wouldn't do if they were like also talking with other characters in the world of the play. Falstaff isn't the only one who has monologues or like inhabits this space in the play. We see Hal giving monologues. We see Hotspur gives some monologues. There's this great monologue where Hotspur is like reading a letter but keeps interrupting himself to like tell the audience all the things he's thinking and feeling about the letter as he's reading it, and then like reminds himself to like read one more sentence, and he reads one more sentence, and then he like storms around for a little while more and then reads more of the letter. It's very delightful. Falstaff does this all the time. We talked also in class a little bit about the different actors who played comic roles. So early on in Shakespeare's career as a playwright and as a playmaker, the actor in his troupe that did most of the comic roles was named Will Kemp. Later, the actor who plays most of the comic roles is Robert Armin, and you can see a little bit of the personality of how those actors performed in the roles that Shakespeare wrote for them. We don't know that he wrote them for them, but like it seems like he wrote for them. Robert Armin is a musician, and so he has a lot of songs, and he tends to have a more of a melancholy fool character that you see in those later plays, whereas Will Kemp is more of an acrobatic character. He dances, but it's thought that Falstaff could have been played by Will Kemp because Falstaff is a comic character, even though he's not a clown, right? He's less of a stereotype than that. One of the things that people like to talk about when they're thinking about these two actors who play the clowns is a speech of Hamlet's in Hamlet, where he is telling the actors in that play how they should act. And one of the lines is, "Let those that play your clowns speak no more than is set down for them." And many people interpret this to say that Will Kemp, the earlier clown actor in Shakespeare's company, did a lot of ad-libbing and like making up new lines and like making up jokes to interact with the audience all the time, whereas maybe Robert Armin followed the script more. But what's fun is that Falstaff is a character who is continually like, when someone gets cast as Falstaff, there's often an expectation that they'll do some ad-libbing, interacting with the audience as part of their show. I saw a truly wonderful Falstaff at the American Shakespeare Center 2009, 2010. He played Henry IV Part 1 and Part 2, as well as Merry Wives, and he was always interacting with the audience and sometimes adding in new lines. So there was a moment in Henry IV Part 2 when Falstaff, instead of paying good wages for soldiers, pockets the wages and recruits a really sorry group of people And in this production at the ASC, Falstaff referred to the like people sitting in front of the stage as those soldiers. Um, and he like protests like, for their poverty I know not where they got that. But that day in the audience there was a nun. And so he like throws in an extra line saying, except for the nun, she made a vow. And like the whole audience just busted out laughing because like, especially the nun. But it's just this beautiful moment of like theater being made live. Like there's improv happening. When Tom Hanks played Falstaff in LA a couple years back, there was a day when there was something that like went terribly wrong. There was a medical emergency in the play, and the show had to stop. And so Tom Hanks like runs out on stage as Falstaff and like does like 5 minutes of improv where he's like yelling at the audience members to sit back down. There's this woman who is wearing a dress that's like pretty similar to his costume, and he like makes a whole string of jokes about stealing, how she's stolen his costume. And like, the thing that's really fun about this is that he's absolutely living in that platea. Like he is Falstaff, but he's also talking about the fact that they're in a play. So I'll give a link in the description for that clip as well, so you can watch that and get a feel for what Tom Hanks' Falstaff was like. But I think that one of the reasons why that clip has become really famous is that that's what we want Falstaff to be. Like Falstaff's like open-hearted interactions, creating laughter from whatever's around him. That shows a love of life that I think people find really beautiful in this play, and is why I think there's a lot of tension in Hal as well, that he wants to be responsible, but he also, like, how can he let go of Falstaff and the relationship they have too. So it's a very interesting play. I hope you get a chance to see it live at some point. If you're looking for a film production, I think the best one to watch is The Hollow Crown, where Tom Hiddleston plays Hal. It's good times. Good times. Those are my thoughts for the day. It's a lot about Falstaff. There's so many other great characters in this play. I hope that you enjoy reading about them, and I'm looking forward to our discussions.